Welcome everyone to ASAN's 2024 Gala. This year's theme is Grow With Us, in recognition of our growth and in tribute to the power of our grassroots to fight for the rights of our community. Because of our community's support, we've been able to expand and take on new projects, like our Taylor McGee Grassroots Mini Grants program, named in honor of former ASAN staff member and activist Taylor McGee. Every year, our gala is an opportunity to celebrate self-advocacy. It is an honor and a necessity to recognize the work of self-advocates and the disability community at large, because our work is only possible with our grassroots. We can only do this work together. We continue to celebrate and gather virtually, in a world that has moved past COVID-19 while it is still very much a threat. We uplift those who are working to keep people safe, those fighting ableist and racist mask bans, those pushing for more and better information on long COVID, those who work to remind people that the pandemic is not over. Tonight we are gathered to celebrate our community and applaud the remarkable work of our awardees. For many of our awardees, this work spans years or even decades. Thank you so much for being here with us. I want to thank all of our sponsors this year. You can see our silver and bronze sponsors on the screen now, and all of the other sponsors you can find listed in this year's program. Your generous support truly makes a difference for ASAN. This year's theme, Grow With Us, reflects not only how ASAN has been able to expand our work with the support of our grassroots, but how crucial grassroots are to this work. We'd encourage everyone to check out our 2024 annual report, which is available on our website right now, to learn more about the work we've done this year. Thank you to everyone joining us online today, to everyone who has made calls or submitted comments, to everyone who has shared our resources, to everyone who we have had the honor to fight alongside to make sure autistic people are included in the issues that affect us. We wouldn't be here doing this work without you. It is now my pleasure to introduce ASAN's incoming Executive Director, Colin Killick.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Autistic Self-Advocacy Network's 2024 Gala. I'm Colin Killick, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the incoming Executive Director of ASAN. This is going to be a fantastic event, and I want to thank our panelists for being part of it and congratulate our awardees on this well-deserved recognition of their remarkable work. I also want to thank the entire ASAN staff, especially those folks who worked so hard to bring this event together. Although I don't technically step into the role of Executive Director until next week, I'm incredibly excited to take this opportunity to introduce myself to this community. Because although this is probably the first many of you have heard of me, I've spent my entire 11-year career in disability rights advocacy in enormous admiration of the work this organization does. Way back in 2013, I was 23 years old and a fairly new volunteer member of my local disability commission in Somerville, Massachusetts, when we got a request for help. A 3-year life skills training program for young autistic adults was trying to open in the city, but the neighbors of the proposed site had gone to the zoning board to try to block it from opening because they did not want to live next to autistic people. At the hearing, they not only voiced the typical NIMBY complaints about traffic and property values, but said that, quote, nobody would want to live next to a place like that, and that the presence of autistic neighbors would make their children unsafe. In response, I reached out to the New England chapter of ASAN, whose members turned out in force at the next meeting. For perhaps the first time in their lives, both those neighbors and the board heard from actual autistic adults about their lives and experience, heard that we were not the boogeymen that they had imagined. Within a month, the neighbors' motion was unanimously defeated, and eventually some of them even had the decency to apologize. That was the first time I got to see firsthand the power that autistic people can wield when we organize. The following year, I became an organizer myself and co-founded the campaign that has pushed the Massachusetts State Legislature to increase funding for housing vouchers for low-income people with disabilities, one that has so far grown that funding from $3.5 million per year to more than $16 million. I also began training organizers and community members on disability rights, and when I needed an example of the difference between advocacy allegedly conducted on behalf of people with disabilities and advocacy that was actually led by people with disabilities, I would point to ASAN and the way this remarkable institution has radically reshaped the way millions of people see autism, not as a plague in need of a cure, as some other organizations had framed it, but as a way of being and a diverse community of individuals with the right to be included in society. I've spent the last 5 years as Executive Director of Disability Policy Consortium, a civil rights advocacy and research organization in Massachusetts run by and for people with disabilities. In that capacity, I've gotten to work on a variety of issues I know are very familiar to this community, from protecting access to long-term services and supports, to campaigning to stop the use of shock devices at the Judge Rotenberg Center, to overturning discriminatory crisis standards of care that would have sent people with a wide variety of disabilities to the back of the line for ventilators in the darkest days of 2020. Now I am deeply honored to get to work on these issues and many more at the federal level, and to do it not only at an organization I have admired for years, but with a staff that colleague after colleague has told me is the best of any disability organization in the country. I am well aware that in stepping into this job, I am standing on the shoulders of giants, and that I will have to work tremendously hard to match the impact that Ari and Julia had in their respective tenures as ASAN Executive Director. I also could not let this moment pass without thanking Avery Outlaw for their amazing work as Interim Executive Director. They have not just held this organization together for a year, but led it to several major accomplishments. I'm very grateful that they're staying on as Deputy Director, and very much looking forward to working with them and everyone on our team in the critical work that lies ahead of us. It goes without saying that the events of the next few weeks are going to be incredibly consequential for everyone in this country, our community very much included. No matter what happens, however, there is going to be no shortage of work for ASAN to do to defend and expand the rights of autistic people, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the entire disability community. We are presently hard at work pushing for legislation that would finally put an end to sub-minimum wage and give everyone the chance at genuine, competitive, integrated employment, and that work will continue until we succeed. The new 504 regulations implemented this year by the Office of Health and Human Services, which ASAN worked hard to influence through our comments, present a huge opportunity to expand accessibility through the healthcare system. The devastating consequences of Hurricanes Helene and Milton have made it abundantly clear that emergency preparedness policies must do more to keep people with disabilities safe, and we have partnered with Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies on a proposal to develop critically needed accessible materials on this subject. We will defend the right of autistic people to access reproductive and gender-affirming health care. We will welcome new Autism Campus Inclusion Fellows and issue more mini-grants so that we can spread knowledge and build power throughout our community. Two areas that we will strongly prioritize are our work to, respectively, defend the rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autistic people of color. On the former front, we will advocate across the federal healthcare bureaucracy to expand access to home and community-based services for people with IDD and defend the settings rule against any attempts to weaken it. We will fight for greater access to augmentative and alternative communication and push federal agencies like the National Institutes of Health to do more to actually engage non-speaking autistic adults in their research and prioritize interventions that actually increase our community's well-being, as we did in 2024. I am also excited to deepen ASAN's work in pushing for people with IDD to actually be included in community-based participatory research, such as that funded by the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. I've been involved in community-based disability research for the last decade, and I've seen firsthand what a difference it makes when people with disabilities are the agents of research, not just its subjects. When we are the ones setting the research questions, leading the interviews, and conducting the analysis. However, even compared to other people with disabilities, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been consistently excluded from participating in the research conducted on that community. ASAN has been working to change that since 2021, and we will redouble those efforts. Meanwhile, we will partner with BIPOC-led organizations to tackle the dual impact of systemic racism and systemic ableism on disabled people of color in general, and autistic and intellectually and developmentally disabled people of color in particular. We will push the CDC and the medical system more broadly to examine the practices that lead to huge racial disparities in autism diagnosis and special education assignment, as well as the lack of resources for adequate disability services in majority BIPOC school districts. We will tackle the housing and employment discrimination that affects our entire community, but is particularly acute against autistic people of color, and we will specifically expand our advocacy to the Department of Housing and Urban Development to expand voucher programs benefiting our community. Last, but very much not least, we will work to combat the violence and inequities our criminal legal system forces on our community in general and autistic people of color and people of color with developmental disabilities in particular. This includes fighting for the ability of both incarcerated people and those exiting jails and prisons to the health care and accommodations they have a right to, as we did in 2024 through advocacy to the Federal Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, as well as calling out police violence against autistic people, particularly those of color, and advocating for fundamental policy change that will actually address it. Above all, we will do all of this with you. From its first days, the power of ASAN has been that it is an organization run by the community it serves, a nonprofit run by and for autistic people. We will need your help to accomplish these goals, and we hope you will get involved, whether by donating, sharing posts on social media, reading our toolkits, or reaching out to your elected officials and joining in on our advocacy campaigns. Finding my own autistic identity was for me, as may be the case for many of you, both a confusing progression through a long series of diagnoses, from dysgraphia to dyspraxia to nonverbal learning disorder, and a journey of self-discovery as I tried to understand how to relate to the world. I'm incredibly proud today not only to call myself autistic, but to have found a place in this incredible community, and I cannot wait to join this fight alongside you. Thank you very much.
We will now begin our 2024 Gala Award Ceremony. We are excited to recognize this year's remarkable awardees for their service to the self-advocacy and disability community. We will start with the Nothing About Us Without Us Award, given to self-advocates whose work fights to make sure that our community's voices are being heard everywhere that decisions impacting our lives are being made. This year, the Nothing About Us Without Us Award goes to Communication First. Communication First is the only nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and advancing the civil rights of the more than 5 million children and adults in the U.S. who, due to disabilities or other conditions, cannot rely on speech alone to be heard and understood. We are honored to give them this award. Our next award is the Creating Community Together Award, given in recognition of autistic people who are working to grow and strengthen communities in various ways. We are honored to give our first Creating Community Together Award to Long COVID Justice for their continued grassroots work to confront the Long COVID crisis. Thank you, Long COVID Justice. Our second Creating Community Together Award goes to Pauline Bosma. Pauline is the founder and coordinator of the Rainbow Groups of Massachusetts Advocates Standing Strong, MASS, a network of support groups that started in October of 2004 for LGBTQ+ adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She continually finds new ways to grow the network by supporting people across the state as well as nationally, and on occasion, internationally. We are honored to give her this award.
We're excited to announce this year's Mel Baggs Down in the Valley Award. In loving memory of Mel Baggs, this award is given to people that we feel are doing the work that honors Mel's legacy and the advocacies he did for autistic people. The name of the award comes from one of Mel's writings, Up in the Clouds and Down in the Valley, My Richness and Yours, which includes the line, "They have lived on a mountain so long that they have forgotten the valley I come from even exists." This year, the Mel Baggs Down in the Valley Award goes to L. Dax Daxer for preserving the memory of autistic and other disabled people who were victims of filicide through the Disability Memorial website they have maintained for many years. We're honored to give them this award. The Loud Hands Award for Autistic Storytellers seeks to honor autistic people who are telling stories, fiction or nonfiction, that are making change. This year's Loud Hands Award goes to Ashley Story for her work on the show Dinosaur and contributions to autistic representation. We're happy to give her this award.
The Harriet McBride Johnson Award for Nonfiction is one of the oldest awards we give. It is named for disabled author, attorney, and disability rights activist Harriet McBride Johnson, and given to those who embody her writings on life and the disability rights movement. This year, the Harriet McBride Johnson Award goes to Catherine Gilliard for her writing on health equity, and particularly her piece, How Black Autistic Women and Girls Are Excluded from Conversations on Resources and Research. Thank you for your work. ASAN's award for Ally to the Autistic Community is given to people who support the autistic community, but also understand the importance of listening to and connecting with autistic people, and ensuring that autistic people are part of the conversation and the fight. This year's award goes to Shannon DeRoche Rosa for her work on the Thinking Person's Guide to Autism and continued support of the autistic community. Earlier this year, we lost Steve Silberman, author of Neurotribes and devoted advocate for the neurodiversity movement. His book shifted public conversations on autism and elevated the voices of autistic people. Steve immersed himself in autistic community, attending gatherings and exploring our community's history, which he brought to light with his remarkable writing. He was a fierce ally, committed to inclusion, equality, and dignity for all. Tonight, we'd like to take a moment to remember him. Thank you all.
On behalf of the ASAN team, I want to thank you all for joining us for our 2024 Gala. It's always an incredible opportunity to honor the work our community has done throughout the year and celebrate with you all. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to growing even more with our community in 2025. Take care.